Welcome to the Quality of Love podcast. I am your host, Tyrone Dixon, nationally certified life and relationship coach, husband, father to two beautiful princesses, and CEO and founder of Rose Through Concrete Consulting. Thank you guys for taking the time out to listen in with us tonight. We really appreciate it. You guys have made it to another hump day. That means you've made it to another question and answer episode here at the Quality of Love podcast. I want to take the time out to say thank you. We've recently reached over 11,000 downloads, and this is a huge deal for my new audience and people that are just joining, listening to the Quality of Love podcast. Had it not been for the pandemic, and if you're old, I know you've heard this story multiple times, but had it not been for the pandemic, the Quality of Love podcast would not have come to the forefront. I was actually waiting on us to find a home, my wife and I and the kids to find a home before I was going to put forth the Quality of Love podcast. But obviously, due to the pandemic, I had a lot more free time at my disposal. So what I did was I took the initial 50 plus or whatever episodes that I had created for the Quality of Love podcast, and I started to use it, right? And I started to actually do the Quality of Love podcast. And I'm thankful to say that we've reached over 11,000 downloads in a little over a year. That's a huge deal to me. So I want to say thank you guys so very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Can't thank you enough. Continue to subscribe, continue to like, continue to give me some feedback and reviews as I continue to challenge myself to grow in different directions. And my team behind the scenes continues to celebrate our small victories. With that being said, don't forget, guys, we do have the we do have the deal going with Humble Fit, aka Mr. Sharon Miller, where if you use the code King Dixon 1, you will get $10 off of anything on the Etsy website. Again, that code is King Dixon 1. Don't forget to hit Sharon up for that gear. As you guys know, I've been using it for over a year now. I've reached a milestone in my own individual life where I've been working out for over a year. And I can honestly say definitively 90% of my workouts have been worked out in some type of Humble Fit gear, whether it's the sneakers, whether it's the shirt that's very, very good with moisture wicking, keeping you cool when you're going through a serious workout, or some shorts, man. This guy, Saran, he's on top of everything that you need in terms of casual gear and athletic gear as well. So go ahead, use that use the code, King Dixon 1, and get you some workout gear or get you some casual gear. As you guys know, the fall is coming through, and I heard that it's going to come hard. So with that being said, as you guys know, we like to kick our shows off with quotes of the week. This quote here is by yours truly. I came up with this quote probably going back a year or so ago, and I shared it last week on my Facebook page. So if you have not seen it, go ahead and like and follow me on Facebook as well. But the quote is, the minute I feel a funny or negative vibe from a person, place, or thing, I'm out. Again, that quote is, the minute I feel a funny or negative vibe from a person, a place, or a thing, I'm out. And that quote I actually came up with, like I said, not too long ago, a year or some change ago. And that quote, to me, it's all about protecting your energy. You guys have heard me say this on the podcast plenty of times. I am a huge proponent of protecting your energy. So to protect your energy at all costs, and that's where the quality of love and relationships that you have in your life does determine the quality of your life come up as well, right? With protecting your energy and making sure that the people that you allow in your life or the areas and situations that you get yourself involved in, they're not taking away from your energy. If there's a funny or a negative vibe, I would invite you to get out of there or get out of that situation, because I certainly do. Right. And that was a product of me learning to listen to my own intuition, I would say. Just learning to, when I enter into rooms and you get that funny feeling where it's like, something isn't right here or something's a little off here. I started listening to that feeling over the course of the past couple of years, and it's gotten me out of a lot of situations in which I know initially the vibe was off. But in the past, I may continue to go along with the vibe, or I may continue to stay within that environment, hoping that things change, right? So I've offered that quote over to you guys, man. As soon as you feel a funny or negative vibe from a person, place, or thing, be out. All right, let's get into our relationship questions, relationship and mental health questions. Question number one: how can I become more independent in my relationship? All I do is obsess over my boyfriend and what he is doing. It's really damaging our relationship because I will pick an argument just to get his attention or to see if he cares. Once again, that question is, how can I become more independent in my relationship? All I do is obsess over my boyfriend and what he is doing. It's really damaging our relationship because I will pick an argument just to get his attention or to see if he cares. I think what you have on your hands right now is what I like to call a codependent relationship. So that's like everything your boyfriend does, you want to be a part of, or you want to have some type of in on. I can guarantee you this has been 100% of the case in any time that in which I've identified and worked with people who have codependent relationships, that that relationship will be damaging over a long period of time. So I won't say it'll end because, one of you guys might find a way to hold on. But what I will say is that that is a very, very dangerous relationship to be a part of because you don't have your own identity, right? And there's nothing wrong with having a separate identity in a relationship or doing things that you like to do as well as doing things that your boyfriend likes to do. It sounds like, and I could pretty much pinpoint that he's getting frustrated because you constantly want to be around him. And sometimes men just need to be away, right? Men need to be able to have some sort of freedom. And I only know this from my own personal experiences. Men need a certain amount of freedom and a certain level of freedom to be able to miss you and have that longing of wanting to be back around you. If we have to spend every waking second with our wives, with our girlfriends, with our significant others, it's bound to cause us to be frustrated and start to feel some resentment because we enjoy our lives with you guys, but we also enjoy being able to go out and hang with the fellas and go out to a bar and catch a football game or whatever the case may be without having to worry about our woman being around. So it sounds to me like you're very much, at least if not in one now, you're heading down the path of codependency. The very first thing that I would invite you to do is start to do things that you like to do on your own. Right. So outside of your boyfriend, outside of anybody within your atmosphere and your environment, start to do things that you like to do alone and do more of those things. Right. So if you're someone, for example, who likes to binge watch TV, binge watch episodes. If you're someone who likes to be physically fit and work out, go ahead and work out all by yourself. Right. And as you continue to do that, what you're doing is you're strengthening your independent muscle, so to speak. And as you continue to strengthen your independent muscle, you can now start to use that or translate some of that energy into your relationship, right? So when your boyfriend says, okay, I'm going to go hang out with the fellas tonight, I'm going to go watch Monday Night Football tonight, you can go, oh, okay, that's fine, honey. I guess I'll watch some episodes of Desperate Housewives, or I guess I'll go to the gym for a couple hours while you out, right? It's very important that you set an environment within your relationship that allows opportunity for you guys to miss each other. If you're around each other 24/7, if you're, what in your words, quote unquote, obsessing over your boyfriend, quite often that's going to make him feel a lot of pressure, right? And when men feel pressure, we don't typically respond in the best manners. We start to lash out, we start to lose our emotional control. So find some things that you like to do and do more of those. But then also find a way to do some of the things that he does like or likes to do. So for example, if he's willing and open, go out to a bar and watch a football game with him, or go to watch a baseball game, or do something that he enjoys doing as well. Then he won't feel like you're necessarily intruding within his space or within his environment. It's more welcoming you in and you being receptive to the gentleman. But certainly, most important thing that I would say in your situation specifically is start to do more independent things within your relationship. It's cool to be in a relationship, but it's also awesome to have that space where you can kind of do your own thing as well. Question number two: what's the best way to push loved ones away? Once again, that question is, what's the best way to push loved ones away? Generally, I'd say being selfish, rude, dismissive to anything that they're saying or trying to get across to you, not being receptive to their needs, anything that you could do to push anyone away, right? So shutting down, not being open to having dialogue. All of those things are things that you can do to push loved ones away. What I will say with that, because I've worked with people in the past that have pushed loved ones away or felt like they needed to kind of have their own independency and not have loved ones near them. I am a big advocate for having a support system, because if we're our only resource, then we're bound to run into situations where we only have one perspective. And if we only have one perspective in situations, then we limit our options. When we limit our options in situations, it causes us to revert back to the same old behaviors that we may have displayed before. Right. So I am not one that advocates for pushing away your loved ones, especially if they support you. But if you want to, I'm here to answer your questions. If that's something that you would like to do, then be a generally mean, rude, not someone who takes accountability for their actions, not open to dialogue, and generally being a my way or the highway type of person. That's a situation that'll push your loved ones away. Question number 3. Can certain individuals evolve beyond pride and ego into a state of humility? Once again, that question is, can certain individuals evolve beyond pride into a state of, or beyond pride and ego into a state of humility? Absolutely. You're looking at one right now. I very much, I would say probably 20 plus years of my life. I won't put a specific number on it to age myself, but 20 plus years of my life, I would say, was spent revolved around pride and ego, right? So pride and ego were what led me for a large portion of my life. Over time, what I realized is that I lacked empathy. Once I started to work on empathy and understanding things from other people's perspective, right? Not putting myself in their shoes or forcing myself in their shoes, but just literally taking a step back and looking at something from their perspective. Like I can remember early on when I was practicing empathy, I remember there was a situation in particular in which I was working with a mom who constantly brought her child the latest in fashion, right? So whether that was designer gear, Jordans, whatever it was. And I did not understand how she could continue to buy her child all of these items, and her child had displayed all of these negative behaviors. And as I'm going through my head, and I'm like, oh my, she's stupid, she's this, she's that. Yes, I did say these things. And this is why she's a bad parent. Just very judgmental in my thought process towards this woman. I started to talk to her, and when her and I started to talk, we developed a pretty decent relationship, I would say. And what she told me was that the way she feels about herself as a mom is directly tied into being able to buy her son things, right? So being able to buy this designer gear, being able to buy the latest Jordans, that made her feel like, okay, at least I'm doing something as a mom, right? I didn't completely fail because my kid is not displaying socially acceptable behaviors, but I didn't completely fail because I can afford to buy him these Jordans. And we kind of connect on the level of being able to purchase and wear nice clothes. When I talked to this woman, I felt really bad, frankly. I felt really, really bad about just going into a situation and judging someone. And as I started and continued to work on my empathy, I realized that having empathy naturally brings a certain level of humility to your life. So I just worked on it more and more and more. And I eventually learned emotional intelligence and some of the other NLP, neuro linguistic programming, some of the other things that I've taken in the past. And as I continue to strengthen my my empathy, right, as I continue to strengthen my empathy towards others and my social awareness too, I would say my social awareness was another huge piece. I started to feel myself, and I continue to feel myself thinking in more of terms of a human being, right? Just being more humble, expressing gratitude, being extremely grateful for the situations that I've gotten myself in, because I could have easily fall victim to society, statistics, or anything like that. So absolutely, you're looking at a person who went and threw their pride and ego to the side and now expresses a level of humility. I won't say I'm perfect. I'm continuing to work on that. I think 20 plus years of being one way, it's certainly not going to be easy to change overnight. But so I'm continuing to work on that. but I can certainly say that I've humbled myself quite a bit, and ego and pride don't play a big role in my life anymore. Question number 4. What are the advantages and disadvantages of a long-term relationship? Once again, that question is, what are the advantages and disadvantages of a long-term relationship? Starting off with the advantages, I'd say I say this quite often on the Quality of Love podcast, but I really think it's important for there to be elements in a relationship in which the partners miss each other, right? And naturally, a long distance relationships allows for opportunity for you guys to miss each other. And I think that's a plus in any relationship, because when you do come back together and when you guys do reconnect, the love is generally more fulfilling, right? And it feels just generally better to have seen someone that you loved after a long period of time. I'd also say that other advantages includes not having to feel like you're crowded, right, or smothered. And especially early on in the relationship, that's very important because you want to have, as I said a little earlier, that independence within your relationship, but also have things that you guys do together as a team, right? So naturally, a long distance relationship will have an element of independence built into it. So I think that that's an advantage of any relationship. The other advantage I say that in addition to missing each other, if you've gotten to a point where you guys are having sexual intercourse and doing things sexually, it enhances, and studies have shown this, you can go Google it. When you spend time apart from your partner and then you guys are back together, or you reconnect or rekindle, the sex is actually enhanced, right? And again, go ahead and Google it, research it if you need to, but it enhances the sex. Now let's shift over to some disadvantages. We talk about disadvantages of a long distance relationship, or a long distance relationship. I think it can be very, very difficult to remain committed to one person if you don't see them often, right? If you don't see this person very often, it can be very, very difficult to remain committed to them if it's not something you're used to. So you're constantly practicing being committed to a person, and that's asking a lot of someone if they're not used to that. Other disadvantages is that you don't get to spend a lot of time with each other. Obviously, the missing piece is good, but when you don't get to spend a lot of time with each other, when you do see each other, it has to be pretty much all of your time spent with one another. And that at times can feel like it's a little intrusive or a little too much going on for anyone. So I'd say that's another disadvantage. Lastly, one disadvantage that I don't think that people think of when we talk about long-term relationship or long distance relationships, excuse me, is that long distance, it leaves a lot of space for not having met the parents or not having to be introduced to different dynamics of the relationship, right? So an example would be, let's say you're talking to a young man, young woman on the phone, and they're spending all their time talking to you. When you go and you're with that person and you see that, oh, now they have cousins and brothers and sisters and anything that kind of shift the dynamics of the relationship from just you and them to you and a mom, to you and a sister, brother, cousin, whatever it may be. A long distance relationship it doesn't allow you to experience that as often as you possibly could. And what I've seen from my personal experiences is that it's cool to be able to have that long distance relationship and know they have a brother or sister. That's a completely different thing to be involved with them and with them regularly and know that they have a certain relationship with their sister or mom or brother, whoever it may be, that might be a little off-putting. Maybe they do everything that their mom asked them to do, brother, sister, dad, do everything that this person asked them to do, and it turns you off, right? So when it comes to dynamics within a relationship, I think long distance relationship hinders the ability to really be able to assess all the dynamics within the environment. Question number 5, how do relationships work after cheating? Once again, that question is, how do relationships work after cheating? It's a lot of work. I'll tell you that much. It takes a lot of work. I believe that there's a seal of trust that's not brought into anyone's awareness when you first start a relationship or you're in a relationship for a long time. When you cheat, that breaks that seal of trust, right? So we used to say like you're moving the goalpost when we're talking about like creating unrealistic expectations for a relationship. When you cheat in a relationship, you move the goalpost further back, right? So it takes you that much more effort, that much more love, that much more energy to put forth to be able to make the relationship last. So a relationship can certainly work after cheating. I invite you to go through or go rewatch or re-listen to two episodes that I've had here on the Quality of Love podcast. One is the surviving an affair episode, where I speak about surviving an affair from the perspective of the person that cheated, as well as the perspective of the person that is the person that was cheated on. Then the next episode that I would invite you guys to listen to is one that I did a couple of weeks ago, maybe even last week, but it was can a relationship go back to normal after a partner cheats? Yes, it can. The amount of work is extraordinary. And I think that that's where the disconnect, the gap between knowing and understanding that there's work to be done within this relationship, and then actually being able to commit and do the work within that relationship, that's a huge gap. To understand and know that when we talk about a relationship working after cheating, it's all about the commitment level to the work that you guys put in, both the cheater and the person that's been cheated on. If you've been cheated on, please don't force yourself into a relationship or try to force yourself to go back to normal immediately, because that is where resentment comes into play. If you're willing to work, if you're both willing to commit to being there for each other's needs, then I think the relationship can work. Question number 6. How do trauma and PTSD impact a relationship? Once again, that question is, how does trauma and PTSD impact a relationship? I think those two things have a significant impact on any relationship. One thing that I'm seeing quite frequently is that when we talk about relationships for Black people specifically, we don't acknowledge the amount of trauma or the amount of PTSD that we experience. And maybe it's because I've not gotten this far yet, but maybe it's the fact that it's a part of our subconscious and we're not even aware of it. But what happens is we go through so much trauma and we experience so many unhealthy relationships growing up that it starts to play out into our relationship. So whether that's witnessing abusive relationships, witnessing relationships that were where both partners called each other out of their name, all of these things have an impact on the way we interact with people and the way we interact as we grow older. So PTSD and trauma has a significant impact on relationships. And I think that we are coming around as a society to where mental health and talking about mental health is becoming an acceptable thing. But I think there's much more work to be done in terms of how does my mental health impact my relationship, right? Because if I seen my mom get abused in previous relationships, or I seen my father verbally abusive to someone in relationship, then chances are a lot of those behaviors are going to be played out in my relationships as I grow older and as I move forward. So I'm very happy that this is becoming a topic of discussion. To answer your question, I cannot express it enough, but trauma and PTSD has a significant impact on any relationship, especially a relationship in which you're close with your partner. All right. So if you have trouble expressing or identifying areas in which you struggle when it comes to trauma and PTSD, as you guys know, I'm all about going to see a mental health professional, seeking that help, whether that's a therapist, a life coach, mental health professional, whoever it is. Go talk to someone, because there are a lot of people equipped in our society to help you with techniques that can help you get over PTSD and trauma, or not even get over it, just deal with it and manage it. And I think that if you don't take that step to get professional help, then it'll continue to have a negative impact on your relationships, because you're not addressing what needs to really be addressed. All right, let's touch on our insight from a former narcissist. How can a parent deal with the narcissist children? Once again, how can a parent deal with narcissist children? That's a tough one. I can't imagine, just from a perspective of me being a parent, I can't imagine having to think about my children growing up as narcissistic individuals. if that ever is the case, and again, I hope it's not, what I would want to do or what I would offer to do in those situations is hold them accountable for their actions at every corner, right? So anytime that they try to skirt or skip around being held accountable for their actions, I would hold them accountable for their actions. Excuse me. And I would do that in the hopes that they would eventually break out of some of their narcissistic ways and narcissistic characteristics, because whether you want to acknowledge it or not, and basically judging off your question, I know it's become a frustration to you, but any individual that's narcissistic, they will struggle with relationships as they continue to grow older and move forward. So I would want to nip it in the bud now, so that way my children don't experience these hardships later on in life and have very limited opportunities to make real genuine friends. Because if you look at any narcissistic individual, I don't care who they are, they don't have genuine friends around them. They typically have people that will say yes to their requests and not challenge them to be better people. All right, so that's what I would do. I would challenge my children at every point, at every perspective, just so they understand that in the world, you're going to be held accountable for your actions, whether you like it or not. Question number 2, why do you stay with your covert narcissist? Once again, that question is, why do you stay with your covert narcissist? I think first of all, I wouldn't stay with my narcissist as a covert, but if I'm interpreting your question correctly, I think what happens when you talk about people staying with covert narcissists or narcissistic individuals in general is that human beings are creatures of habit, right? So that means we get used to things and we just go along with the flow, right? So if I'm used to a narcissistic person who displays narcissistic characteristics and has narcissistic traits that they possess, if I'm used to that, it's going to be very difficult for me to shake my either conscious or subconscious thought in regards to what I should do, right? So, for example, if I'm used to someone calling me out my name and like being very, very verbally abusive to me, if I leave that situation and I go into a relationship where now someone's treating me respectful, they're catering to my needs, they're having and acknowledging me and are willing to have open dialogue, that's a foreign situation to that person, right? And unfortunately, 9 times out of 10 in those situations, that person that's now being treated how they should be or want to be treated will go back to the narcissistic individual because they're not used to being treated in a nice manner. They're used to being cussed out. They're used to being called out their name. So they're not going to stay in this situation that's healthy because it's not something that they're used to. And it's unfortunate, but that's the reality of being a human being. And sometimes, again, we revert to our behaviors, right? Our common behaviors as human beings, we revert back to baseline. And if our baseline is, I'm okay with this person calling me out my name or calling me the B word or whatever it is, then that's just going to be what it is, unfortunately. Question number 3. How common is it that a narcissist have feelings? Once again, how common is it that a narcissist has feelings? I think, now this is generalizing, I'll say. But I think it's very difficult for a narcissistic individual to not have feelings, because obviously as a human being we all have feelings, we all have emotions, but specifically to express the feelings or express emotions. When narcissists do that, that's usually a ploy that they use to try to rope you in or to make you feel like they're a victim in a situation. So if they express feelings like, oh, you hurt me, you hurt my feelings from doing this, or I was hurt or very upset about what you did or said, when narcissistic individuals do things like that, all they're really trying to do to you is try to get you to feel like you did something wrong to them and play the victim role. It's classic. It's what they do. But when it comes to expressing feelings and having feelings, yes, every human being has feelings. Narcissistic individuals don't express their feelings unless there's a ploy or they're looking to manipulate you in some way, shape, or form. Question number 4. What are the side effects of living with a narcissist? Once again, that question is, what are the side effects of living with a narcissist? I think there are several side effects to living with a narcissistic individual. Mainly, it's feeling insecure about yourself, right? So feeling like you're not worthy of certain things, or you'll never measure up to certain things, or that you're constantly beneath someone, are the biggest things that I felt personally when I got out of a situation where I was living with a narcissist. So it sucks to say, but it's a really low point and low feeling living with a narcissistic individual, because you feel like you can't do anything right? You can't, no matter how hard you try, no matter how many positive things you do, that individual will constantly tell you how terrible of a person you are, how embarrassed they are to have you as a partner, and how you should be worshiping the ground they walk on. Right. So it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough living with a narcissistic individual. And when you do get out of that situation, there's pretty good chance that you're going to have to rebuild your self-esteem and rebuild your life in the manner in which you want to live, which is good in my personal opinion. I know that sounds like, oh yeah, of course it's good. No, but I really think it's good, because now you get to design life according to how you want it, right? So you're not living on anybody else's terms, and anything that you don't want to accept, you do not have to accept once you start to build that life. And finally, question number 5. How can a narcissist claim to be a God-fearing man, even attend and be involved in church? Once again, that question is, how can a narcissist claim to be a God-fearing man, even attend and be involved in church? This is something that came to my reality maybe 2 years ago. Some of the biggest narcissistic individuals are involved in church. Listen, if you've ever grown up in a Black community, you know the term church folks, quote unquote church folks, and a lot of quote unquote church folks are narcissistic, right? They're very self-centered, only think about themselves, and don't necessarily have a social awareness, which is why I'm over the past couple of years, I've been extremely mindful and hyper vigilant with what churches I attend or what services I attend in terms of church, because I'm starting to see like a lot of parallels between a individual who may attend church or claim to be a God-fearing person and a narcissist, which it's not something that you will want to see, but it's the reality, right? So I'd say some of the biggest narcissistic individuals that I've met, interact with, engage with, they attend church in some way, shape, or form, or they may read their Bible. And that's just human behavior, man. Human beings are naturally hypocrites. I think all human beings are hypocrites, but in this instance, don't be alarmed that a narcissistic individual is using God as a shield, because there are a lot of people that do that, unfortunately. All right, guys, that's it. That's all we have for you guys tonight. Remember to get those questions into TQLP20@gmail.com for any questions that you guys have for our Wednesday episode. Once again, that's TQLP20@gmail.com, or hit us up on our Facebook page, The Quality of Love Podcast. Don't forget to use that code Dixon1 for $10 off of anything on the Humble Fit Lifestyle Etsy site. And remember, guys, as always, the quality of love and relationships that you have in your life will determine the quality of your life. Peace and love.